Outposts, an advanced endgame system packed with customization options that will let you build a home among the stars, and more importantly, as a place to exploit workers from across the galaxy while you rake in billions of credits and your employees struggle to put food on the table. Galactic capitalism. Welcome to Entry 0.3 of the Starfield Handbook, your most reliable source of Starfield information in the settled systems. Mumble here, and today we'll be covering everything you need to know about Outposts. We'll be digging into Outpost Construction, Outpost Functions, crew members, and general Outpost Mechanics. There's one that's going to be particularly useful that you probably haven't heard of yet. Welcome back to over 2,000 of you who've joined me on this journey in the past week, and to hopefully many newcomers as well. Let's get started, we've got a lot to cover. Let's take a look at two important clips regarding Outpost Functions and Mechanics before we dig in.
If you have the skills, you can even figure out that certain creatures and plants, you can build an outpost and produce resources from those plants and animals.
Assign crew and companions to work at your outposts for added bonuses and set up extractors to harvest resources while you're away.
Outposts, you kind of slightly mentioned that a few minutes ago. But something I caught again during the rec towards the end was it sounds like there's going to be kind of an advanced feature with some of these outposts where you can actually leverage some of the plants and animals on the particular planet that you're on to generate resources, which then made me think about, well, if I land on a planet, am I limited in the resources that I can use to build an outpost? In other words, is there only so much I can do without, is it unlimited what I can do for an outpost is what I'm trying to say. Can I build whatever I want, or do I have to have a certain amount of resources to build whatever, design that I'm thinking of at that time?
So outposts, kind of like I was talking about with shipbuilding, is a very deep system, and it does involve a lot of resources to really, do what you want to do. You can do all of that, so you can land on a planet and start building, but you're going to need to really go crazy. You're going to need to develop your character skills. You're going to have to collect those resources. But there is a ton there, and you can even actually somewhat connect them between planets, shuttling cargo between them. So it's a really, really cool system. But I will say again, like shipbuilding, one that has a lot of depth. It's not really meant as like an early player kind of system. It's meant to be one that you're going to play over a long period of time.
Well, that brings me to just a quick follow-up on that. So potentially, can Outposts be an economy generator for you as well?
Yes, they can.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Some great things revealed from these clips, which we've already touched on briefly, but Todd's comments on resource shuttling between outposts is particularly welcome news, which we'll explore more shortly. At its core, our outpost serves as a home away from home and is one of our key income generators, which we can also automate and enhance with the help of crew members. With regards to confirmed functions of outposts, we know that you can set up extractors to harvest resources, presumably any element or compound that comes from the surface of the planet, so resources like lead, iron, and aluminum, for example. Whether this includes gaseous and liquid resources is not certain, but I'm starting to wonder if this will be exclusively for solids, while other devices will be used for different states of matter. We've seen evidence of an oil well being utilized briefly, which will likely pull some unrefined petroleum or other fuel type that we need to process, and it's possible there may even be another machine for extraction of natural gases via fracking or some other methods such as cryogenic air separation for acquiring gases like neon. Our second key resource generator is from the cultivation of flora using hydroponics, which is the technique of growing plants using water-based nutrient solutions rather than soil. I'm curious to see if Starfield actually follows this definition rigidly, or will instead need special soils to house our plants of choice. Perhaps it may just come down to making the water palatable to each plant type. We've seen an example of a fully scanned ice creeper, which provides us with the resource toxin, that its reproduction type is self-cloning, which implies that we'll be coming across other forms of flora reproduction as well. For self-reproducing, we could have various forms of asexual reproduction, such as vegetative propagation that uses cuttings of a host plant to reproduce, spores as often seen in fungi, or fragmentation where the organism splits into fragments that can turn into fully mature clones of the original organism. More common methods of propagation would probably be simple pollination that may require two plants to kick it off if we're dealing with single-sex plants, though many plants are monoecious, meaning they contain both male and female structures required for reproduction. Depending on how deep the system goes, we may be able to create hybrid plants, selectively breed stronger strains of plants, or select other favorable traits that speed up growth or provide greater yields. I love farming in games, so I'll be pumped to see some of these extensive features built into the system if they exist. Given that resources kind of just are, in the sense that toxin is just toxin from what we can see, I don't really expect too much beyond something like enhanced yields, decreased growth times, expedited propagation of new plants, or lower costs of growth. Nothing too complex. The botany skill would also almost certainly play a role in our ability to farm effectively, it's just unclear exactly how still. Our final resource generator we know of is through the farming of fauna. It isn't explicitly stated whether that is through reproduction and the subsequent killing of them to harvest resources, but it does seem like a probable outcome. Sorry, Gary the Sailgator. Mumble needs a fresh supply of pigment. The other alternative is a more gentle approach to harvesting that could be similar to sheep shearing or cow milking, where the creature will remain alive and well in your outpost, but can only be harvested after a certain amount of time has passed. I could definitely see this being possible as well. One thing that's puzzling me is how we would actually get these animals to our outpost. Sure, if it's an egg-laying creature, I could see us being an egg thief and incubating it initially, but some of these creatures are incredibly large, and getting a full-grown baddie in there could prove problematic if we can't take their eggs. I'm thinking using the xenosociology skill will be the most logical means of bringing these creatures in, since we can mind control them. Assuming everything is an egg-laying creature in the game, visuals for fauna reproduction should be pretty chill, but goddamn, if we've got mammals on some of those planets, we might be in for some Discovery Channel level action. We did see a bunch of large egg-like structures in some of those previous clips, so perhaps there's a baby alien waiting to hatch for us to harvest. We definitely haven't seen any sort of enclosures yet though. Resources from fauna we currently know about that should be acquirable through our outposts include fiber from mothwing grazers, pigment from hunting sailgators, and sealant from swarming dragons. Other key features of outposts include power generators such as the turbines we've seen. Solar panels feel like an obvious one as well, but I haven't actually seen any yet, nor have we seen confirmation that additional power can be stored in batteries, but that also seems very probable. We can build research stations and further than that create science hubs, which will presumably house the necessary features for conducting crafting of items, food, weapons, mods, and munitions, and of course, your outpost will be a place that you can fully customize into the home of your dreams. I'm excited to see what we can actually craft with regards to decorations versus what we'll have to acquire on our travels. I know damn well I'm dedicating an entire room to shiny things I find on my journey. The final feature of Outpost, which I think is going to be incredibly useful, is the shuttling of cargo that Todd mentioned on the Kinda Funny Xcast. Since we have the ability to run multiple outposts that may be generating completely different outputs, having the ability to move cargo to and from different outposts could prove to be an amazing time-saving feature, and even be critical to outpost optimization, depending on how exactly this system works. It'll be interesting to see if there are hefty costs associated with it, and whether there are limitations and time gates to this feature. Regardless, I'm excited for it. Let's take a look at the Outpost Construction system itself and what kind of resources and requirements there are to make our mark on the planets we conquer. Here are some key clips from the Direct and 2022 gameplay.
After some exploring, you can find a spot to set up a base camp. Outposts can be built almost anywhere on any planet. And the habitat modules come in all shapes and sizes, filling all different purposes. You can even live in them. Assign crew and companions to work at your outposts for added bonuses and set up extractors to harvest resources while you're away.
Something cool we have this time is we have a new fly cam where you can toggle between on-foot building, or you can now use a top-down isometric camera, which helps plan out larger parts of the outpost and placing those larger halves. So that way you can really plan your structures and what the overall feel of your outpost is. And then when you're on your feet, you can really decorate and fine-tune things much easier.
And there's deep crafting systems, from running research projects with resources you find, and you can build your own outposts. These act as a home away from home for survival and resource generation. You can choose where and how to build each one, and you can hire characters you meet to keep it up and running.
We actually have a surprisingly small amount of in-game footage of Outpost to work off of, but even that 70 seconds we just watched provides us with a lot to break down. A point was made saying you can have an outpost almost anywhere, which actually seems very possible. By looking at different images of where your scanner is out, you can see that almost every single image has the outpost button in the activatable state, which I'm interpreting as being a valid location to place an outpost beacon. That interface also tracks your outpost count, though it's not clear if it's just for the planet you're on or all of your outposts. After selecting the outpost option in your scanner, you're able to plop down an outpost beacon, which serves as your starting point to define the working area your outpost will cover. The chunk of land it covers actually looks fairly sizable, and you'll want to pay careful attention to the info box at the top left, which states what kind of resources are available within your outpost for extracting. If you're building outposts with the intention of harvesting resources, then that readout will surely be the deciding factor on whether you set up shop or not. It's interesting that we don't see a resource cost for putting down the outpost beacon. My best guess would be that we need to research, then craft outpost beacons in order to set up our first outpost, but it could also just be tied to a skill unlock and we have a cap on the number of beacons we can have placed at any given time. The prereqs around outpost setup is just completely unknown to us at this time, so your guess is as good as mine. However, it wouldn't be surprising if we have some sort of baseline outpost building components right out of the gates or early on into the campaign, and the rest is just tied to research or our skill tree, considering outposts have been described as endgame content. While there very well could be a cap on the number of outposts or beacons we can have, considering we have a whole galaxy to explore, it would feel kind of weird to have some arbitrary number limiting your ability to build across the vast reaches of space. I think a more probable outcome is that there's no cap and we're simply limited by the number of resources we can supply to our outpost building efforts and the amount of crew members we can provide to drive automated or enhanced production. Let's spend some time properly going over the outpost building interface because there's a lot to break down here. First thing we want to take a look at is build requirements at the top left. Obviously, there are resource requirements for everything that you build in your outpost, and there are only 5 resources we've currently seen actively used for structures at least, those being aluminum, sealant, titanium, lead, and iron. Now, I wouldn't trust these specific costs at face value given that between the 2022 and direct gameplay, the costs have changed completely. The previous examples in 2022 were only showing aluminum and iron, and there was always a fixed value. But I think it's realistic to expect that these types of resources are used in structured production. As for the other categories, if you look at the top menu where it says structures, there are actually 12 total menus we should be able to cycle through. Some realistic guesses on items that would be included in those missing categories based on the images we've seen of actual outposts include interior and exterior decoratives, furniture and functional objects, resource harvesting devices, power generation and storage devices, and other tools such as research stations. I'm sure there will be much more than this though. Moving on to the bottom right, we have some pretty standard options in terms of moving, placing, deleting, and changing the variants of the items we're placing down on our outpost. And then moving on to the very bottom right, we get a readout of what kind of cargo we have in our outpost, the number of crew we have assigned to it, how much power we need to actually operate our outpost, depending on what we have running. So I'm assuming that's going to be for things like extractors and potentially automation through hydroponics or robots that maybe require some sort of power. And then we've got total power and production per minute. And I can see this working one of two ways. Total power could just be a raw measurement of all the power producing sources that you have. So you could have a turbine and a solar panel that contributes to 10 total power, for example. And as long as your needed power falls under that number, you're good to go. Or it could be the case where production per minute is based on those power generating sources you have, and it contributes to your total power count, and you can store additional power in some sort of battery technology. I don't know which way this is going to go. I have a feeling that it's just going to contribute to total power, and production per minute will actually end up being a measure of what your extractors are outputting. We'll see in a couple weeks. And last to cover in terms of interface functionality is the build limit on the bottom left, as well as the outpost naming convention. So typically it's going to show you the name and the system that you're in, and then by default it's going to give you the planet name and outpost number X, depending on what number outpost you're placing, but you seem to be able to customize the name of your outpost as well if you'd like. As you can see from these two images, the build limit goes up anytime you place an object. It's not clear whether certain objects have a higher weighting in terms of increasing the build limit and whether all objects contribute to that. It could be just that structural and larger objects play a role in this. It's also not clear whether build limit is impacted based on the planet that you are placing an outpost on or other skills that could factor in the maximum number of objects that you can have in a given outpost. Now let's quickly look at all the outpost structures we can place and what kind of limitations there are on placement. Outpost airlock is the first on the list, and I'm expecting it to be a hard requirement on any planet without a breathable atmosphere at a minimum. The 4-wall hab is a generic structure that seems to be just a basic room. Perhaps the other variant serves a more explicit purpose. For the hydroponic habs, we see a hab A being placed, but we have stills where we know a hab B has also been placed, and it's noticeably more flat and features a roof structure that looks more like a 4x4 frame than the 2x2 looking hab A. These hydroponic habs are surely where most, if not all, of our flora reproducing efforts will take place. The science hab has 2 variants, one being more pyramidal and similar to the hydro hab A, which seems to be a trend, while the science hab flat small is again more flat at the top and lacking angled sides. It's likely that you must have a science hab in order to add a research station to your outpost. Next is the military hab, which appears to be just a structural hab similar to the 4-wall hab, but perhaps this is where you'll be storing and modding weapons and crafting munitions if these actions require something other than a research station or don't directly occur through our inventory. Hab rounds are an alternative structural shape that can be standard or for hydroponics, and appear to be quite a bit larger than standard habs, and as such seem to have higher construction costs than similar structures. The small hex hab also seems to follow this higher resource cost trend, as they're about the same size as the hab rounds. We haven't seen any variants on them yet. It's interesting that they're referred to as small though, as it seems like an obvious hint that we'll have at least 2, if not even more sizes to work with once we research or unlock additional variants. Finally, we have the hallways and watchtowers on the list of confirmed structures, but we haven't seen any actively being placed. There are obviously a lot more we can see from the B-roll cuts, but we don't know their actual names yet. A few things of note on the actual placement of structures include physical limitations, such as the max height you can place an object due to excessive foundation. It also seems unlikely you'll be able to place objects with interiors without an airlock connection, which can be made by creating a link between any outpost objects. Objects that appear to be standalone, such as the watchtower, would likely be the exception to this. Moving on to some B-roll images, we get a nice top-down view of a few new structures that we haven't seen yet. First being 2 array-looking devices, so there's the orange one at the bottom, and then the more yellowish circular one. They look like some sort of transmitting device or satellite dish. And then in that circular hab, we have another unknown structure sitting on the top of it. There are some different images that give us a much better look at it, but I'm still very unsure what that actually is. Also interesting is the 2 square-shaped habs are also hydroponics habs, and I'm guessing that it's actually just a classification for whether you can conduct hydroponics in there, but it's not a hard requirement that you have to, because it looks like there are couches and other structures in there, and it doesn't look like there's any plant life in either of them actually. Next is a quick interior look in one of the hab structures. It looks like either a star map table or some other interactable table. It could just be decorative. And then there's also an orange box that's labeled storage. It's not clear whether we can actually store items in there. It could just be a decoration again, but it would stand to reason that we have places to store any additional cargo that we have in our outpost. Next is just a well-staged room with a lot of decoratives to show what you can do in terms of customizing rooms to your liking. We've seen this B-roll clip a few times featuring crew members on the outpost, and just to the right is the extractor that we'll see next. And then there's also the walkway up through the airlock to the entrance of the outpost. Quick picture of an extractor and one of the wind turbines. Here's an alternative view of the extractor, and you'll notice at the bottom right of it, there's a cube-like structure that could serve as some sort of storage device, could be a battery. Not really sure what that would be, but then also to the far right, you have those yellow containers that are reminiscent of dumpster bins or could potentially be used to store the resources we harvest from our extractors. I feel like it's very likely that a lot of these things will just be decorative things to create a more immersive feel in our outpost. Here's a look at a circular hab that's pretty decked out. You've got hanging plants, you've got the weight set in the back, you've got a suit on display. Right beside that suit is a chest of sorts, probably could hold some weapons, nice punching bag, you've got a sweeper bot to clean things up, you've got a rug on the ground made of the hide of some sort of alien creature surely, and then some nice seating areas. So yeah, pretty well customized, so it looks like we're going to be spoiled for choice in terms of how we can set up the layouts of our outposts here. Then we got a more science-based looking room here. There's a few controls that we can look at. I'm not sure if any of this will be interactable. Could just be immersion-based type decorative. And then on the other side of that room, we have another one of those chest-like looking devices at the left side there. So I'm thinking that's the most likely place we're going to be storing items, since we've seen it multiple times and it looks like something that you would put items in just based on the shape there. Everything else looks pretty decorative though. Here's another look at one of those array type satellite dish devices. The company is Axion Energy, so I'm not sure if this would be an energy generating object, but it looks more like it's receiving or transmitting information in my mind. Then we've got a better look at some of the wind turbines. Obviously you can place quite a few of them. I'm not sure how close you can place them together, but these are going to be one of the staple items that you need in terms of power generation. Now this still is of particular interest to me, given that in entry 0.2, I was theorizing that we will have some sort of method of extracting fossil fuel type resources from the ground. And if you look very carefully, just at the top of that hydroponic circular hab, there is what looks just like an oil well machine at the top of it. And if you watch the B-roll back of it, you can see it in motion just like you would on an oil field. So I am very convinced that we're going to have some sort of fossil fuel extraction going on in our outpost. Other things we can see here are some taller tower type structures. Again, it looks like some sort of maybe beacon for receiving or transmitting information. And then some other small structures that look like either decoratives or there's some sort of cargo storage devices that we just have to have present on our outpost to increase the maximum amount of cargo we can have on our outpost at any given time. You'll also notice just below the oil well device that there are these circular devices and a sort of flower lotus blossom looking device, and I have no idea what these are going to be. I'm not sure if it's for energy generation or energy storage, but they're pretty interesting. Maybe it functions as some sort of solar cell. The last thing worth mentioning on this slide is these strange looking devices. It's got sort of a black top and these yellow bulbs at the bottom of it, just to the left of that lotus shaped looking device. I really have no idea what that could be, but it seems like something that serves an actual purpose versus some sort of decorative. It looks like it can move. Maybe it's for processing more gaseous elements and liquefying them. It could also be for extracting moisture out of the atmosphere. I have no idea. Let me know in the comments what you think some of these things could be. Next is another interior view where we've got a clear look at a research station. Then we also have what appears to be some sort of textile machine or fabrication device. It looks like there are some reams of material that you can load on the top of the device. Not exactly sure what we'll be using that for. And then finally, that white and green divider. You'll notice in a lot of the interior shot that those are used to sort of separate different parts of the room out. Here's another angle of that same interior. You can see multiple reams of material for that fabrication machine. And then we've got a little bot rolling around, kind of looks like a mobile cooler of sorts with a little lid that you can access on the top, and then some general seating. This is a great exterior shot that gives us perspective on the different levels we can achieve with our outpost. You can see at the very back there are some fairly raised structures that might be a watchtower. Then we also have a much clearer look at that lotus shaped structure on the top. Still not sure what that is. Then we have what appears to be a more organic type of outpost feature to the right side of the character that we see. So that could be part of flora reproduction, or it could just be a natural structure that came with the area where you place your outpost beacon. We also have a better look at the device with the yellow orbs at the bottom and the black blades, so to speak, protruding out the top. Still doesn't really give us that much of a clue on what it could be. And then just to the right of it, there seems to be some more technical looking device at the right side of that hab. Another interior shot featuring a wide range of decorative objects that we can place inside of our outpost. I'm not sure how many of these we'll be able to actually create ourselves versus things that we have to scrounge on our travels. But to the left, you can see another large crate-like storage container that I'm sure we're going to be able to put items into. But other than that, the only thing that I see in this image that could potentially be an actual functioning item is the machine to the right of the monitor in the back of the room. One final thing definitely worthy of note is there is clearly a lot of organic life that is cohabitating the area that we're working in, and it's unclear if those are eggs or just some sort of plant, but it's pretty cool that we can set up outposts near all of these organic features. Another exterior shot with nothing particularly new that we haven't seen already. Then we have an alternate view of that circular platform looking device that's sitting on that white square hab in the middle. Great interior shot here, lots of decoratives being featured. Looks like we have a star map table that we can potentially interact with to get our character ready to get off the ground more conveniently than walking to our ship. And then a couple objects that again look like they could store items inside of them. I'm fairly certain where that yellow light is in the back of this image is the doorway to the airlock, and that this is the interior of one of the habs on the image we just previously saw. Another cool shot with more of a lab research theme to it. There is a research station in the back, but everything else looks pretty decorative here. I have, however, been noticing these toaster-shaped objects that you can see in the bottom left of this image, and I'm not sure if the slot at the top requires some sort of key card and it's a small portable object holder or it's like a lunchbox or something. It's kind of the size of like a car battery as well, so maybe it's for small items that require some sort of power source. They're interesting though, and they've been popping up fairly often. This is just a different viewpoint of the same circular hab we previously saw, so nothing new here except there's a different robot roaming around. This is a cool image because it indicates that we can have multiple ships landing at our outpost. There's at least two, obviously, and then maybe even a third one at the bottom left of the image. And then something that's very interesting is in between the third and fourth turbines is this spherical clear dome. And I think this next picture confirms that this is a hydroponics dome where we can be conducting flora reproduction. The shape seems to match up pretty accurately here. Nothing new from this image. And then this is a final image with the closest look we have on those circular platform type devices. When they're animated, they sort of spin. I just don't understand what those would be used for. Somebody please tell me if you have a viable theory on what this would be. Wow, that took a lot longer than I expected, and honestly, I think we barely scratched the surface of how deep Outpost crafting can go. Last on our list today is crew members as they relate to Outposts. I'll save a deeper look into companions and crew member utility on spaceships for another entry. As we've seen from previous clips, our crew members can support our Outpost efforts in numerous ways. They can be assigned to a specific outpost, they're able to work while we're away, and with the right skills can provide increased utility to the tasks they perform. Crew members can range from simple utility bots, sometimes bearing no bonus skills, to general crew members found along the way in your journey, and full-fledged companions which appear to bring the most skills to the table. Here's a quick clip from Todd's interview with Lex Friedman that touches on robots a bit more, and some footage from the direct on crew members and companions.
Are there robots?
Yes.
Those companions, are they robots by chance? Can you
One
say?
of the companions, the robot Vasco, yeah.
Okay, so they have a name and a personality and so on. And
Vasco does, and then there's a whole bunch of, I call them generic robots. We use them for utility. If you were to chart the future, you would say robots would have a much bigger role in our future than we are presenting. But that was a tone thing. So most of our robots are there as utility robots, and there are some combat ones as well as enemies.
so it's a deeply human world
Very much, yes.
in terms of
Yes.
tone.
And hire a crew to keep it up and running. And while you can build your home among the stars the way you want to, you're probably not the only person who will call your ship home.
Ready to lift off when you are, Captain.
Engines ready.
The Frontier is fueled and ready, Captain.
Some of the members of Constellation can join you on your journey. These companions can serve on your crew, and they'll always be there when you travel.
We'll be traveling together until we either find an artifact or this lead runs dry.
Each companion comes with their own valuable skills for your ships and outposts, as well as unique quest lines. Eventually, some friendships might blossom into romance.
I don't know that I've ever really loved anyone except you.
And if you're looking for a little extra help on your ship, you can always hire additional crew at spaceports.
Got any room on your ship for someone like me?
You'll also meet potential crew members out in the world.
Still think there might be a spot for me on your ship? I gotta get off this rock.
Assign crew to your ship or outposts, and their unique skills will affect how they run. And just like companions, most crew members can lend a hand in the field. Take Bosco, for instance.
So pretty simple stuff. Crew members help you out and have specific domains of expertise. The big nugget of information from these clips is actually the only look we have of the crew roster, which we can actually gather quite a lot from. At the top of the bar of the roster, we can see options to view either our ships, current outposts, which likely only functions when you're actually visiting one of your outposts, and your master list of outposts, again confirming that we can have many outposts. Looking under the name column, we can see clear indicators of crew ability, which is reflected by the symbol beside their name. The more complex the symbol, the more skills they seem to have. You'll note that all of the 4 skill crew members are actually our main campaign companions. I wonder if it's possible to find standard crew members in the wild who also have 4 skills, or if our crew members can be leveled up to a higher tier where additional skills can be unlocked. That'd be pretty neat. We can see a mix of 2 to 3 skills on our standard crew members, and finally we have a plain old security bot that has no skills whatsoever. I'm wondering if these bots will be limited to also only performing specific tasks based on the robot, as I could see some tasks being quite difficult to perform based on some of the little guys we've seen so far. Next is the assignment column. It'll be very interesting to see how the assignment system ends up working for our crew and companion members, given that there could be an enormous distance between outposts and our ships. In the example we see of Heller being assigned, it shows him at a place called Darna, and it's not clear if that's a planet, moon, city, or ship, but the clip shows him on what looks to be a moon. He's then instantly able to be assigned somewhere, leading me to believe that the new crew members are transported to their assignments automatically, potentially regardless of distance as well. I could definitely see it not being possible to reassign a crew member to a new outpost instantly, unless they're on a ship that is on the same planet as the target outpost, or if it's between different outposts on different planets or systems, then there could be a time delay that must pass before they're properly reassigned to account for that travel time. It could potentially use the same system for shuttling resources that Todd described in the Kinda Funny Xcast interview as well. Then there's the skills section, which gives us a much better idea of what skills are being properly utilized based on assignment. We can see that as soon as Heller is assigned to an outpost, his outpost engineering skill lights up, which I think is safe to assume means it will be used. It's not really clear how that works with your own skills, like does the highest between ourselves and the crew member win, or is there a stacking effect, or is the productivity of a crew member impacted only by their own levels in a utilized skill? This could also depend on whether it's just a skill that unlocks the ability to do new things versus do things more efficiently. We'll find out soon enough. We can see the same thing happening with Marika and Sam for being assigned to a ship. It seems like you'll need a healthy balance of crew members with diverse skill sets, and I'm hoping that there's a way to either target farm certain skills, or at least that there's a high number, if not unlimited number of potential crew members we can recruit in our travels to put together the perfect crew. In any case, clearly crew members are going to bring a lot to the table, especially if they have the right skills for the job. And that wraps up entry 0.3 of the Starfield Handbook. The reception to this series has been off the charts, and I'm now on a mission to become the #1 creator on all things Starfield. I know I have to earn it, so my promise is to only deliver high quality, no bullshit content when Starfield launches. I want to respect your valuable time by dropping grade A knowledge and game takes backed by rigorous testing and research of the game. No regurgitated week-old news or 10-minute videos with 30 seconds of payoff. If you vibe with that, then hit all those buttons or whatever, strap in and enjoy the ride. If you learned something from this video, drop a galactic capitalism in the comments, and if you haven't already watched entry 0.2 of the handbook, then chart a course for a crazy chemistry lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.